Okay, we are going to get started on time here. What? I know. Craft the whip. That's right. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your lunch and good networking. My name is Stacy Vaughn. I have a little piece of paper I have to read first. This session is being pre-qualified to support continuing education requirements for several cybersecurity certification. If you are an AFCEA member, seeking attendance documentations, please make sure to scan your badge in the back seated area, and in conclusion of the session, you have to stay for the whole session, by the way. And the scanner will shut off at 15 minutes before, after our session, so if you have any questions, that kind of stuff. And also note that what else? Oh, Q&A session, those kind of things will be filled in as needed, as we have somebody who's doing the running. That's the post notes aspect of it. So I appreciate all of you guys coming for our small business panel. I like to do a little survey. How many of you guys are small businesses? Oh, nice. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate that. I have been an AFCEA member for 20 some odd years, and I will say that's my pitch. Go join, go network, come and enjoy our events and help facilitate this opportunity. We have great selection of panelists, as you can see, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but I also need to take a minute and say our sponsor for Logicor is our sponsor for the Small Business Workshop. And we want to thank our small business Greater Augusta chapter for supporting us today. So make sure you wave at Marcus and tell him you did a great job. And also, please note there's a lot of small business opportunities for you guys to really think about, and always come and ask questions afterwards if you have any questions. All right, so we're going to go right into our session. As we all know, 2025 has had a unique year in finding opportunities and persisting challenges with Department of Defense, and programs like the Mentor-Protégé and small business and SBIRs, which we would say the Small Innovative Research Grants initiatives have been enhanced for small businesses, particularly in the high demand, as you guys would know, of cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, logistics, and advanced manufacturing. So the DoD is focusing on diversity supply chains, future opens of doors, being agile, adjustable as small business, and also negotiating through the FARS and DFARS, and then of course, let us not forget the CMMC .2 requirement required to jump through some of our hurdles. So with all that being said, and policies with the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, including key provisions in government programs, we want to have these conversations openly with the various people on this panel. So we will start with today's esteemed panel, and I'll let Terry Dennison on the far end introduce herself, and then we'll go down the line.
There we go. Okay. Like I said, I'm a liberal arts major, so technology is kind of tricky for me. But good afternoon, everyone. I'm Terry Dennison, and I'm the Georgia District Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration. Been with SBA since 1987, both at headquarters level work, and I got tired of being inside the Beltway and have spent the bulk of my career outside in the field in Indiana, Wisconsin, and now Georgia for 23 years.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason King. I am currently the director for the Mission Installation Contracting Command sites at Fort Gordon and at Fort Benning. I've been in contracting now for 20 years. Spent majority of my time has been with Army. Did a few years with Air Force dealing with major weapon systems. Pretty much have been a specialist, KO, all the way up to now as a director, but also spent a year and a half as a assistant director of small business at APG on their CCOM. So pleasure to meet you guys, and glad to be here on this panel.
Good afternoon. My name's Dave Hepner. I've got 40 years in with the federal government, and I said enough. 37 years of it was as a contracting officer and director of procurement at the Savannah River site, which is a small 310 square mile area just south of Augusta here. Had about a dozen different contracts, well over about $9 billion in a year. Thank God I had a great team of 25. And retired and went to work as a VP for business development for two different firms. One was an 8A, one was a large business, and had a real fruitful thing. Then I turned 65. Medicare does a terrible thing to you when you make too much money. So I decided I'd go on and take the drop and come to Georgia Tech and be a procurement counselor.
I don't know, I'm gonna follow that. Hi, I'm Megan Metzger. I am the CEO of Decode. I'm also a managing partner at Decode Capital, which is a venture fund. Excited to be here. At Decode, we focus on closing the gap between the speed of technology and how the DoD is operating. So why that matters for you all? There's two sides of our business. So one is accelerating commercial technologies into the government, and that means helping understand all the barriers and all the pain points that you all live every single day, and how do you remove them? So we've advised over 300 tech companies and small businesses on how to be successful in the government market. You name the problem, I've probably seen it. They're wild and wacky. On the other side, we embed with the DoD in big programs with senior leaders to help find and expand the industrial base, but also looking at how they become more innovative. So we are bringing the perspective of where can they lower their barriers, where are they putting up unintentional blockers to innovation and to small businesses like yourself, whether that's acquisition, contracting, finance, policy, you name it. So we sit there right there at the nexus so we can kind of speak both sides. The last thing I'll say is this is my third company. I've been a COO and a CSO at small businesses building government work. So I've been in your shoes many times and also could share some tears and beers with you on how that experience went.
Well, thank you. Stacy Vaughn, a small business owner, serial entrepreneur, and I've helped businesses for the last 20 years. I spent over 10 years working federal government and then over 15 years as a contracting support for Garrison Command, supporting in various components. But one of the things I always find is challenging for a small business is how to integrate and talk to various components that are a good resource in that aspect. So I'm going to start with my first question with Terry. As we've had an unusual couple of months of the new year, we're in the summertime, what can we expect between now and the end of the year to help with our small businesses in that persona? You can make it short or sweet, however you want to.
I'm just trying to wrap my brain. That's a pretty packed question.
It is a pretty packed question, so let's take it a little smaller. Like, what kind of things do you think will help small business between now and the end of the year?
Yeah, because of course, this is the fourth quarter of our the federal fiscal year is I call the period of insanity. I think it's about 35, maybe as much as 40% of federal spending happens in that last quarter because we realize, oh, we've been prudent all this time. Now we got to spend it or you lose it. So at this point, hopefully you have been prepared because what I always advise people, you really got to start. If your focus is I want to capture as much of that fourth quarter as possible, you really had to have started back in the first quarter so that you're in the best position possible to be able to capture those opportunities. But that said, definitely keep an eye out for the opportunities that are coming up, in sam.gov. I would say also, be sure to follow up if you've been planting seeds throughout the year with your target agencies. If you haven't heard from them, go back and say, okay, I understand we're getting to the end of the fiscal year. Have some decisions been made on some of the projects we had discussed preliminarily earlier? And it's really a matter of being diligent. If you are part of a team or you've been working with, someone that's a possible collaborator on procurements, follow up with them and see what their intelligence is bringing to you. And just be ready, make sure you have everything lined up, financing, your whatever capability you have in your company, make sure it's already in place so that you can hop on those opportunities.
Great. So Jason, what are you guys buying these days that you are noticing?
So, I mean, from a perspective of what we do as far as Army, so me being at the base that deals with pretty much a trade-out basis, being at Fort Gordon and Fort Benning, we're pretty much buying those professional services. But we also seeing the trends of now, with the changes that are occurring, we're going to be looking into moving into more of an enterprise-type solution contract. So that's going to be one of those things where, having IDIQs in place that not just Army, but across many platforms under the DoD footprint can take advantage of. So that's something that you guys are probably can look into seeing that whatever that could be beneficial for you, because that's something that's going to be going across the footprint, even not just DoD, but GSA, things that are set up like GSA, because that's where we're going to a more enterprise approach. And then just kind of speaking on, I know for a fact, like if you are like in I guess arena of having something on cutting edge, the Army Contracting Command out of Aberdeen Proving Ground, they issued on 15 August this thing called Army Open Solicitation, which this seeks commercial and innovative solutions to meet requirements like close capability gaps, advanced technology through basic research, applied research, development, prototypes, and limited production. So if you're interested in that, you should review the Army Open Solicitation for details on submitting the solution. So the solicitation allows you to respond to Army mission area capabilities gaps, as well as like government issued calls for solutions. So what I'm gonna do, if you don't know exactly what it is, it's on sam.gov, but I'm gonna provide the link to that to Mr. Marcus Reese, and he'll be able to put it here on the TechNet platform for you guys to find as well to look further into.
Thank you for sharing that. So we're going down the line. David, with all the years of experience as a contracting officer, now you're advising businesses. How are you helping them with the compliance parts these days?
Well, of course, if you thought that you didn't have enough regulation, hang on. They're going to come out the yin-yang. You look at CMMC, and oh, by the way, yes, it says DOD, but many of you are well aware that as DOD goes, the rest of the government goes. So you're going to see CMMC come to most of the contracts that the government cuts. So you need to be prepared. Get that self-assessment, get it ready, then start proceeding down the path to get certified. I work with businesses large and small to get federal, state, and local government contracts. And I don't know what Megan's pricing is. Mine's free. Yeah, I'd like to say it's a little bit worth more than what you get. So I will tell you that we're with Georgia Tech Apex Accelerator, and of course there's 90 Apex Accelerators across the country, and we can help guide you through all the morass that you've got to put up with. But more importantly, we have this thing called Bid Match, which looks at about 2,000 databases every night, and things that are in your NAICS code and in your keywords get sent to your mailbox every morning. And let me assure you of something. It goes from everything from 60 to 70 every morning down to about 2 or 3. So we're here to help.
Great, that was awesome. Megan, since you've had these 3 different companies, what do you feel like has been the biggest challenge to help them maneuver through this government contracting space? Because I know all 3 were unique in their ways, right?
Sure. Yeah, every single one of you probably has similar but very different challenges. They've run the gamut, and you talked about, hey, it's the end of the fiscal. I call it the month of miracles for the contracting staff. But I think the biggest thing to really focus on has always been trying not to bite off more than you really can chew, right? The federal government is Fortune 1. You're not going to go after all of Fortune 1 companies with the same strategy, and you shouldn't approach every service of the DoD with the same strategy. So you have to identify what is your secret sauce, your wheelhouse, and hyper-focus that on where the money's going and where the contracts are letting. Good news, there's lots of data out there. With a CR underway, with all the budget cuts, with a million different things going on the Hill, I highly recommend looking at the reconciliation dollars. We mentioned going after, you want to be talking to the contracting folks and your program folks that you've been engaged with, but you need to ask the hard questions. I think the biggest killer of a small business is the long maybes that come from the federal government. You want to try to get to that fast no, or hopefully a fast yes. So that means, do you have end-of-year funding? Do you have any UFR funding? Can we make your UFR list? But you have to know what their priorities are, and you have to speak their language. So really focus in on what you're strong at, and get left of boom where you can. If you are only pulling from sam.gov, you're probably too late. You need to be focusing on all those programs and have the conversation before that thing ever hits the street, or 10 other companies have been in there having those conversations already. So those are just some quick tips, but you mentioned the open solicitation. Those are fantastic ways to get in. The Air Force has their StratFi program open right now, and if you've ever seen the open topic, those SBIRs are huge. I used to actually advise companies not to do them because you kind of need a PhD to figure it out. But once you get a phase 1 or phase 2, anyone in the DoD can sole source to you. That's your ticket. And especially with end of year dollars, if you don't come in with a contracting mechanism ready to go, you're going to be too late because they have to move the money fast. A lot of contracting shops are already starting to close up with their requirements coming in. So lots to unpack there. I could go on for years about it, but hopefully that helps.
No, that's great. The other day I was sitting at the PEO panel, and they were talking about OTAs, which is other transactional authorizations, and SBIR, which are going into AI. With that being said, David, since you're over at the tech center supporting these businesses, how do you help them figure out not to get into the squirrel moment? What's the shiny new thing?
Okay, I wish I had a magic formula. I don't. Nobody does. I will tell you that in the back of the room, I put out a sheet saying all the words that you shouldn't use in proposing these days. I strongly suggest you use that sheet because they get screened. And you have to make sure that you know what you're doing and you are providing a valuable asset to the government. And my first thing that I always told small businesses when they came to me, you have to have my trust. If I don't have the trust, I don't sign on the dotted line because I can get in just as much trouble as you can. Why did you give it to them? Because they weren't ready. So our programs hopefully will look at your program. Now, I can only speak for Georgia people. Anybody that's in Georgia, I can help you. Outside, you got to look for your state. There's 90 of them. So, and including the territories and the Indian affairs. So get with them, get advice, and then go after it hard.
Great advice. So Terry, I don't know if all the small businesses, and I just always like to, since you're at the SBA office, to talk about the FAR regulation that small businesses need to focus on, the more importantly. Which, the FAR number, I can never remember the FAR number for small businesses, but why that's really important. 19, thank you. FAR 19, thank you. So I just wanted you to kind of talk about that FAR 19, how important that is for businesses, since we have so many small businesses here.
At it. Oh, thank you. I've got to remember to push the button. I have not looked at it that close. I work more with our 13 CFR, which is Code of Federal Regulations that parallels for the most part.
Okay,
But basically, everything you need to know about doing business with the federal government as a small business, and also as a certified small business. That would be like your 8A program participants, WOSB, Women-Owned Small Business Hub Zone, et cetera. Very important in terms of how sole source authority works with those particular certifications. And also limited competition as in set-asides. You know, the rule of two is very important. Basically, if in the contract officer, they're doing work, research, if they have reasonable assurance that at least two of a category, say 2 women-owned small business or 2 hub zone, historically utilized business zone certified firms could do the work with a fair and reasonable price, then they can set it aside. You know, so those kind of things I think are important because a lot of people don't realize that it is possible to get a direct award if you follow those pros up to a certain amount, if the contract is under a certain amount, utilizing those regulations.
great. Thank you very much for clarifying that for us. Jason, since you work for the base and some of the policies that you guys in compliance, any unique struggles that you have seen that's been consistent with some of the businesses that you're trying to award to?
As far as like companies doing business out at Fort Gordon,
Yeah.
just some of the small innuendos that I can't remember who stated here about, maybe Ms. Dennison or even David himself, about it was Ms. Dennison. Making sure you are registered in SAM, because we find a lot of times that when we get to the point of award, you know, you may have been active in SAM, but then you become inactive because you hadn't checked it. It's been a year.
Yeah.
And so that takes time to reactivate. It could take some time. And so a lot of times when we get to that point, depending on how quickly we need the service, we'll move to the next one. And we're within our rights to move to the next lowest one because now you're not considered a responsive offerer or bidder, whichever one. So ensuring that happens, that's one of the main things. I guess also, you know, sometimes when we do get involved with some 8A companies, right? You know, that's in the beginning stages of some things. So we've experienced sometimes where, you know, the company are saying they're able to do something at that time, and we, you know, gone through the offer letter and the acceptance process, and we get down to the award. And, you know, you kind of already figuring, because we've started that dialogue in the process because we're able to do the 8A direct piece. And so when we get down to that process, you know, we get to the negotiation table, then now you want to, like, you know, your price may be astronomical. And then, you know, we start negotiating, and, you know, you guys aren't, you know, no one's willing to, we've seen people not willing to go down. I don't know, for whatever reason, if they, you know, when they ran their numbers, they didn't come up to what it should be. And then we've moved on from some things like that because we just couldn't get to a happy medium to be a fair and reasonable, because on the competitive market, probably been different. So I'd say when it comes to when you're doing business, make sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed from a standpoint of you've done your homework on what we're doing. Don't just say, I can do it, because I'm that person that'll tell you, no, you can't. And I'm not being mean with it, because we have a mission that we have to hold to and make sure that we are pursuing. So like the KOs and specialists that are in the trenches in trying to get these things awarded, we end up saying that. So when we have these capability briefings that we bring you to the table, and I'm referring to 8A still, when we bring you to that, that's like that technical evaluation. So don't lie, because the government is going to remember everything you said. You said this during this time, and you're not being held, and now you're trying to switch it on us. So whatever you say, just know they're holding on to that like gospel. So make sure whatever you got to say, make sure you putting out and you stand firm on your company, what you're presenting, because that's what they're going to hold you to. Those same standards that you present in that capabilities briefing, that's the same standards they're going to see if we decide to go down that path. And then that's when we end up getting into a lot of things on the post-award side where, well, this is not what you said it was going to be. And no, this is exactly what we provided workload data that was provided during the solicitation phase. So be mindful of everything that we presented. That's your opportunity when the solicitation is out there. Ask those further questions so you don't look foolish there. You're like, dang, because most of the time what we put out is firm fixed price. And when we're putting out firm fixed price things, you assume the risk. So just be mindful, ask the questions. I can't stress that enough by asking as many questions as possible, because I am an advocate for small business. 95% of the things we do in our office is small business. So we're advocates in our office. So make sure that whatever that you are pursuing, that you have it all together.
Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, I got it. Finally, it only took, 22 minutes. But on the pricing, the one thing that is an advantage with government contracting versus, say, private sector is that you have data out there, at least as a starting point, to help you come up with the most realistic pricing in a particular offer possible, because you can see how similar contracts, similar scope, have, what the price was. And that's an advantage that you do have in public sector contracting that you don't necessarily have in the private sector.
And there's some great tools, like the GSA tool, to look at some past aspects of it. So that needs to be reminded. A lot of people don't realize. Go ahead, Megan.
I would say, related to that, kind of in the weeds, but one thing you can do is go to GSA Calc. They might have consolidated by now. But if you're submitting pricing and they're going to ask you, they will always do a fair and reasonable assessment. Find a corollary comp, same years of experience, similar price, and say it's already been proven to be successful and competitive and awarded on this GSA contract, so therefore mine's valid. And if you proactively provide that type of information, it goes a long way. Yep. The companies that grow the best understand more about contracting than some of the contracting staff themselves. Yeah. So know what they're reviewing, talk to folks and understand what goes on in the eval process, and you'll be 20 steps ahead.
And there's also the Department of Labor wage and hour division. Yes. Has all the pricing there by area, which is very important, because you may be in the Midwest and you're bidding on something down in Georgia. Well, guess what? Georgia has a different pay rate. So you need to pay attention to those sorts of things and be ready to answer the questions as why this rate.
Yes, some great resources out there, because as I've also noticed, even capability statement, and this is for Megan and for Jason, when you see those capability statements, and I've seen them all, from misspelled words to emails I can't read to Hotmail, what kind of advice would you give on that marketing component? Because I see that as a big weakness. It doesn't matter if you're large or small.
So I would say maybe first start with like your grandma, granddad test. Let them read it. If you are so jargony and it's not clear what you do and you aren't differentiating yourself, you may as well have not written the capability statement. So especially in this market right now, we talked about how it's changed a lot since January. If you are really differentiated, this is your time to shine, because I can tell you the companies that are getting cut left and right are the ones that's your standard language, you're providing reports and analysis. Understand their mission. Tailor your capability statement. Do not send your generic capability statement if you want to have any hope. So understand what that program's trying to do, understand what the mission, what the ROI is for the mission, and really, really go after why you are different than anyone else to do it. That also will help you if there is a world where you are the only company that can provide that service. You need to put that out on a platter for them to understand if you want the opportunity to either get a sole source. Even if you're doing sole source set aside, you have to be the only women-owned company or one of the only 8 firms that can do it. So identify why you're better than anyone else at what it is you do, and don't put too much jargon on it, and you have to really stand out.
I have nothing left to say. Like Megan covered it all. But one point she made that I want to continue to emphasize is know the mission. Like, it's one thing to get in front of, the customer, who that mission partner is, but also just know what they're looking for. Like, do your homework, know what their mission is. You can also kind of know what we're looking for even when you attend, like as far as Army, we have what we call APBI, which stands for Advanced Planning Briefing to Industry. Everybody that falls under ACC, Army Contracting Command, they end up having one. The MIC has one big one that's virtual. I think ACC, APG, they're gonna have one next month in September. So you just find out when they're having them, you're getting the forecast out for the next 3 years. And so they may, and then also in those APBIs, they end up bringing having the mission partner representative there, whether it be a full colonel or a general or one of the civilian executives that represents the government. They're speaking on the things that they're looking for and where they're trying to be on the cutting edge. So this, like the thing I presented earlier, the Army open solicitation, if you're there, that's something where if you've heard something, that's your opportunity to present something there. So back to, like, if you're an 8A firm, make sure you know the requirement, know if we've given you a draft PWS, if you're an 8A firm and we're pursuing you, just know what you're doing. And even if you're not 8A, you just want to present. Most time I have some people reach out and they go, hey, do you think I'm ready to, stand before the colonel or the general to brief them, or whichever that senior executive service member that's available? I just want to, if you're presented to me before we even get to the table of capability, if you're presented to me your capabilities briefing, if it's not up to par, I'm going to just say, hey, respectfully, you may want to see the Apex team, because some people are at that level still and they thinking, they're there already. But what we're looking for, if I'm asking questions that I know my mission partners, right, and I know what they're looking for, I'm kind of like that little buffer in between before you even get to them, because even though they're not saying that, they're going to ask you, have you spoke with contracting yet or something, or small business, Office of Small Business Program. So by you doing that, having it together, then we can kind of go further in the process. But if you're on the cutting edge, I say use this Army open solicitation piece, because I know that's something that's big, that's going to transition a lot here moving forward.
I know I'm being a little bit preachy, but I care deeply about this. So 2 more things I would say. One, if your capability statement is the same for the Army and the Navy and the Air Force and the Space Force, forget it. You need to tailor it for the service. You need to tailor it for the program, not just the Army. You need to tailor it for the program. And if you aren't familiar across the services, like the language the Army uses is very Army, very different. It's transforming in contact. Those are not the same words that the Navy's going to use, right? So that would be one piece of advice. And the second is, I am also a small business, but being a small business is not your differentiator. That's how they can contract with you. You're competing against some really innovative and up-and-coming firms, and I've seen some small businesses take out some pretty big boys. Because their papers are clear on how they're aligning to the emerging priorities and the speed that this administration is trying to go after, whatever it might be. So don't put yourself in your own little bucket of thinking I'm a small business, now's the time to go do some really, really cool stuff because they're looking for players that bring something different, not just looking for small businesses.
Yes, great point, and one size does not fit all. Go ahead, David.
That is for sure. You know, I can't tell you the number of people that send me these capability statements, and they've got typos on it. Okay, you know, there's lots of jokes about feds, okay? And you all heard them. But we're not dumb. And oh, by the way, when we read it, we say, what the hell is that word? You know, that gets to the trash bin pretty quick. Focus on what it is that you do best. And I always believe in the KISS principle. Everybody know what the KISS principle is? Bingo. And if your proposal and your statements to the government are not simple and to the point, guess what? You failed.
Terry, you want to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, I know everybody's hearing about AI and ChatGPT. Great tool to start something, but don't rely on it. Because if you just
Thank you for sharing
spit in
that.
what you want into the app, it gives you something back. If you go with just that, it's going to be so obvious that it's generic. Sometimes they have things that aren't correct. So just use it as a starter, but then do your due diligence to shore it up.
Yes, great point. I do know at one of our panels from one of our other AFCEA events that somebody had copied and pasted a chat GPT and forgot to put the end, on chat GPT had the little ending scroll. And so, yeah, the government person was not very happy. So that's a qualm aspect. Megan, I wanted you to talk about the chat GPT, the AI. Is that something your companies are using at all to support some of your opportunities that you're looking at?
From a bid and proposal perspective? Or?
Bid and proposal. I've heard now about capturing, those, because I know I'm a capture girl. I'm going to conferences and I know being on the ground, and some people can't afford to do that. So that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of uses of it for what I call left of boom, left of award. Absolutely. If it has bolding and hyphens all over the place, that's a dead giveaway. It's ChatGPT. But our teams even use it for compliance checks, to actually go forth for QA. Please, there's no excuse. So compliance, QA checks. I've even seen companies use it for things like, hey, will this pass muster in this environment where there's a list of words you're not supposed to have in there anymore because consulting is not a in vogue thing to do right now. Right. So, and I can tell you from working with some of our DoD clients at pretty high up levels, the contracts and the things that are getting flagged are ones where it looks like it's reports and analysis, but not delivering or not doing anything tactical and not delivering anything other than reports and advice. So if your proposal has that in there, it might not get selected. You can use ChatGPT to, I've actually put in before, where is this not Doge proof? And after a while, it actually learns what that means. So there's some interesting uses of it, but please do not just rely on it. If you do not do a review, it will not go well for you. But you can even upload, I've uploaded things like, hey, look across the news. If you're bidding on a program for the Army, go find every news article you can, and ChatGPT can help find them for you and help identify where it's not differentiated against that program. So there's really creative things you can do. Again, please human it some, but it will give you a cheat sheet.
Yes, that's a great point. Terry, I wanted to ask you about certifications right now. I know the SBA is utilizing service disabled vet. They're able to upload those kind of things. Can you kind of give us an update about certifications at all?
Sure. I know one of the questions we get a lot is around the 8A program, because there were some legal challenges a couple years ago, and we modified the application process as a result of that. In case you didn't know, certain groups were presumed to be quote unquote socially disadvantaged, which is one of the criteria. And basically court came back and said, everybody has to do a narrative and indicate why they meet that criteria, not just certain groups are presumed. But the 8A program is still there because somehow people think, oh, that means it's gone. As far as the certification process, we had 4 different processes, 4 different platforms, one for 8A, one for HubZone, one for women-owned small business, and one for the vets, which we took that function over a couple years ago. We have one certification platform now, My SBA certification, where you could do all 4 certifications if you're eligible on that one platform. So there's no indication that 8A is going away. Some people have asked about WOSB, Women-Owned Small Business. Is there any concern there in the current administration? There's no legal challenges that I am aware of. And so I think we're good there. So there's still a tool. We still have goals in the federal government, and each of those certifications match up with a particular goal area. So as long as we have those goals that federal agencies have to meet, the certifications will have value that you can use as a tool to leverage, not to make your government business, but to leverage to obtain government business.
Yeah. My other question, I know this from just being in sam.gov forever. The SBA profile, is that still separate from what we have on sam.gov too?
You're talking about dynamic small business
Yes.
search, which is now small business search.
Thank you.
Basically, they upgraded the interface. I think it's a little more user-friendly and presentable, but the elements are still there. Basically, it's a free marketing tool where you can put your business profile. The more you put on, the better. Any federal certifications you have, any other certifications you have outside the federal government, your NAICS codes, your product service, everything that describes what you do. You can display that there, and contracting officers and primes, and even some private companies utilize that database to do their market research. So very important.
Yeah, I have worked with a lot of small businesses have not done that. So this goes right into David, who helps businesses with that. How often is that a daily task, it seems like?
Well, Lord knows that the SBA has been under fire for years. I gotta say that the changes to the SBA certifications website and to the SBS is outstanding. It's user-friendly. If you can't, as the old saying goes, if you can't navigate that area, you may not be good for government contracting. That it's one of those go, no-go decisions. And I just for interesting point, we did 78 8As last year, 268 woman-owned small business, 246 of the veterans, and 85 hub zones, and almost $1 billion in contracts. But what we're teaching our clients not to do is don't go leading in there with, I'm an 8A, I'm a woman-owned, I'm a veteran. Go in, this is what makes me unique. And then after you've sold, you can say, oh, by the way, you can get extra credit by picking us. And that makes a major league difference because, once again, it builds on that trust factor.
Great point. Anything else anybody else wants to add? Jason? Okay. We're at top of the hour. We have about 15 minutes. I want to know if anybody had some questions, concerns. Go ahead, Carter.
This is actually for Mr. King.
So that's a great question. That's something we're actually waiting for Army regulation to come down, because that's going to be incorporated into PWSs, because that's major. And then I think once that is incorporated, during the solicitation phase or even during the synopsis phase, we can just, if it's not clear at that time, because it's going to be new for all of us. So if it's not clear at that time, then that's something we can just address and update accordingly. But that's what we're waiting on, because we know that's forthcoming. So we've tailored certain language already in solicitations and in awards that are pretty much like where we've held off on certain things until we get a clear answer on that. So unfortunately, I don't have the right answer right now, but once that does come to pass, you'll be able to notice it in PWSs, because it'll be standard language in there. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay, Dustin?
This is for anybody on the board, maybe Mr. King, but you said that a lot.
All right. Two things. So I know maybe some of you guys in the room heard of MAPS, right? The marketplace for the acquisition of professional services. All right. So right now there's an update on it where like the Army is currently reviewing the recent executive order about the reason why I go by the enterprise piece is because the executive order that came out about eliminating waste and saving taxpayer dollars by consolidating procurement. That executive order is what's driving it. But with MAPS, because that executive order is out, it's kind of like at a standstill right now because of that there. So the Army is, trying to be creative and come up with ways daily on trying to accomplish just that, the consolidation piece. That's why the enterprise solutions come. We are in like constant meetings weekly of trying to figure out how to do this. So I know for one thing at the local level, one of our contracts, we are to be more of an enterprise solution like we have for training support services for the CCOE. Well, that's going to be intertwined with, it's going to be a contract vehicle that both Fort Gordon can award from and Fort Lee to take advantage of, so to show an enterprise effort. So that's one of the efforts that's going towards that. All right, and then you spoke on about small business. Have any of you guys heard of Polaris, right? So Polaris, for those who haven't, that's that GSA initiative that with the GWAC that's exclusively for small business, providing information technology services and solutions. I mean, that's just one aspect of it because it's set aside for small businesses, Wolsby, things of that nature. So there are some in place. We know the small business isn't going away, but even back to what I was just saying about the local level of the training support service, that's going to be all small business. So it's like we're changing the approach. We know you can't get rid of small business because some of the things may have been in the 8A program. And so now we're trying to, it may not be 8A because they're like consolidating things, but it's still going to be set aside for small businesses in that regard.
I'll give another tip because this also applies at a different level. So I'll give you a live decode example where we work with a service. I won't name which one, but we had 7 different contracts across that service. And we actually went to the contracting staff and said, if you consolidated this and stood up your own IDIQ just for decode, you would save X amount on overhead. And we're doing that even at a micro level. So if it gets them a win and it helps save them money, it's not just reserved for the large contracts. Those are incredible. Please look at them, but also apply it to your own strategy because it really is about the narrative and the story that you can tell and make sure it's real around saving the government money. So that's one tip. And the last thing I'd say is also we've talked about the open topic. The SBIRs, the OTAs, and the CSOs are getting pushed and actually prioritized are also still a great way. We are a woman-owned small business, and I have over 20 contracts, and none of them are small business, and they were all direct award because of those other vehicles. So there's also really interesting ways to do this where you're not reliant just on some of the larger dynamics related to small business right now.
Go ahead, Dave.
My biggest,
Can I ask this question? This is in relationship to that. So where do you see the small business? Where do you see the small business contracting go versus to OTAs and CSOs? Because more and more money is being shifted towards the OTAs and taking away from the small business
Well,
community.
going to the OTAs aspects, it's really learning how to team with those partners.
that's where I was going.
Yeah,
You have got to get teammates.
Correct. But keep in mind the definition of a
You said OTAs on FAR base.
So for an OTA, the majority, the winner has to be non-traditional. You will all fit, if you're a small business, in the definition of a non-traditional company. Why that's really interesting from a partnering perspective too is I'll get calls once a week from a Deloitte or a Booz Harper saying, I need a non-traditional, I can't bid on this OTA, I need partners. So it's actually creating where I think previously, small businesses have needed large businesses. The dynamic's changing, right? Now they're gonna need you more than you've needed them in this weird shift. So I would still really look at them, but it will come down to teaming, and we could have a whole meeting on teaming.
yeah, we could have a whole meeting, but I will give you an example. George Mason is here. We're working on a non-traditional project. And so that's where you have to think about who's in your backyard. How do you have these conversations at a panel to say, hey, this is where I'm at. Where can I fit into your puzzle? Or are you my puzzle piece for what I'm trying to go after? Because we tend to go very granular and focus one way instead of looking outside of that perspective. I have relationships with different companies throughout, and I'm the mad scientist of a puzzle piece. Where does everybody fit? How do we work together? Because there's a lot of opportunities. But Kevin, you want to add to that as a George Mason person?
I had more, I'm talking so loud so they can hear, but. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. I don't have to pop off like that. So the question that I had is kind of related to OTAs, but it's really about we do R&D, so that's the focus of what our contracting is based on. And so, given the speed of innovation nowadays, I think Ukraine changed the game completely. With but they're not talking months and years; they're talking weeks and months from ideation to fielding, and so that's starting to impact across the force. So I'm wondering. I know that the need and the expectation for quick innovation is happening at the operational and tactical level, but I think the limitations of the acquisition system aren't able to make that adjustment that fast. I think the OTA change, as in my imagination, is related to that, to give another ability to have a more versatile funding source available to the force. I'm wondering one, is that valid? And two, what impact is that happening on the speed of acquisition to meet the needs of innovation? That's the question. Long way around the barn, but that's the question. What can you talk about the changes in the speed of acquisition to meet the speed of innovation? Over.
You want to answer? Can one of you?
Well, the OTAs are going to allow you to get to the meat of the issue quicker. If you look at some of the larger contracts that the Department of Defense and DOE and others put out, that's a 18 to 24 month go round. By the time you got it, it's overcome by events. So that's why the contracting officers are really enjoying the OTAs, so that you can sit down and depending on how you're arranged, you can get something fairly quick. a whole lot quicker than 18 months, which isn't unusual, but I mean, you're looking at 60 to 90 days in turning around.
There's a lot going on. If you're following transformation and contact, TIC units, things like that, there are some efforts the Army is actually kicking off right now to go from need identification to award fielded and acquired in under 180 days. I would keep your eye on X-Tech search and some of the challenge and prize competitions. I think we'll see an uptick in those. But there's a lot going on inside the Army in particular to do exactly what you're talking about. And I think you'll see that come to fruition through some of these more innovative contracting mechanisms.
We have time for one more question.
Hello, Marina Alvarez. With DRP, the mass exodus of experienced contracting officers and contract specialists, and the rewrite of the FAR and gutting several things that have been in the FAR for a long time, do you predict it's going to delay the contracts and written? Because if they write a contract with FAR clauses that have since been eliminated, how does that affect, let's say, the Army and its program? I have an idea of how it affects civilian agencies because of my past, but does that impact Army's ability to get contracts awarded and processed with the mass exodus?
So, like we're doing like this whole mass thing right now with the Doge initiative, right? So there are a lot of contracts that have been has had an evaluation analyzed on. So we've had to incorporate. There are like six clauses where we have class deviation. So they're all being incorporated. So believe me, that has been like the bulk of my job has been addressing contracts that, the things that Doge have seen, and we're having to address, not just from a contractor perspective. They start with us, but the customer has to answer. But there have been, we're doing these mass thing of, we have over 100 contracts where we've had to do admin mods to add in these class deviation clauses to account for the changes that are occurring. And then I also want to add, back to the previous question real quick, as far as streamlining process, I know we're not talking, this is not dealing with OTAs, but as we're doing like a pilot program, the Army is coming out of ACC Detroit Arsenal. So as certain bases are doing trial of AI initiative to do like a source selection to be streamlined that much quicker, utilizing AI. So that's one initiative that Megan, to further emphasize what Megan was saying. So that's one, but it's not just, it's coming out of there, but it's been piloted across the ACC footprint. And so we're trying to see where that goes and how quick it goes. And if it does, then that's something that's going to be incorporated.
We volunteer to be a test award.
Yeah, George Mason. Yeah, there's we have a couple more questions. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, hi. I'll be quick. Paul Johnson, earlier, you just brought up AI. It just,
We're recording this.
well, then let's do that. You were talking about AI and the assistance of chat and the obviousness, and I'm sure there's some folks here that may have used that. But I just urge everybody to realize everything that you are putting into chat is a model, right? And I'm sure some of you also have some IP that you don't want out there, or information that you don't want out there. If you understand anything about AI, think about how you're getting the responses, right? It's from folks like yourself doing the same thing. So I'm just looking at OPSEC,
Good,
looking at
great, yes.
CMMC,
Don't do it in
along
the
with AI.
Yeah, don't do in the open public version. Yeah, I was
yeah.
going to say that for sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah,
Thank
that was a
you.
great point, Paul. I appreciate that. There was a question with a young lady in the back. Did we answer your question? Or do you have a question?
Mine is in a little bit different track. So a lot of small businesses struggle with having access to the customer.
Yes.
And, well, limited to no access. So I was going to ask what your strategies were for those small businesses when they have little to no access to the customer and building that trust to David's previous point, when they really have issues trying to get contact.
Can I start with the first thing, David? Join a government contracting association group like AFCEA. I will say that personally, because as a government person and now as a small business, I have been able to get in front of more government people in that perspective. So that's my first thing. Go
Or
ahead.
NCMA.
And CMA. So
The biggest thing is when the opportunities arise, you got to show up and be there. Okay? I know there's times where, you know, it's not convenient for you to go. Well, guess what? That sort of scratches you off the list. So you need to be there, you need to be heard, and you need to be seen by those people. Always make sure, and for gosh sakes, once again, go back to your capability statement. Make sure that it's structured for the opportunity that's being presented. Because otherwise they'll say, well, man, this person can do IT through janitorial. No, it's not going to happen.
yeah. And you need to remember you're in the long game. So
Yeah.
the connections you're making today will be for next. I mean, I've been going to TechNet Augusta for the last 5 years. Trust me, I have done a ton of follow-up. But also, when they keep seeing you, they remember, oh, you're that girl or you're that company. And that follow-through is probably the biggest thing. It's not, you can't wait for them to follow up with you. You have to follow up with them. And I always call it kind of politely, be persistent politely. Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, someone told me once, and it seems to be true, that from the time you make an initial contact with someone until it comes to fruition, i.e., I guess a contract, it could be anywhere from 12 to 18 months, 24 months or longer. What happens a lot of time is people, they'll kind of slow down their efforts. And then the moment comes when they're like, oh yeah, I remember this company, and they reach out to you, but you haven't continued to make yourself ready. Couple things in the federal arena, or particularly federal arena, but it could apply to state and local as well. Look for industry days or events where the buyers or the contracting decision makers are out. I know a lot of time people put their efforts into, I'm trying to get an appointment with. Right. If they're out at an event, they have created an industry day, they're in open mode. So that's when you want to, make sure there's a connection. As was mentioned, be prepared. Be able to tell them in 5 minutes what you can offer that will address their issues. So that means you have to do a little homework. Look at industry, the forecast. I was going to say, in the federal government, we have forecast at acquisition, .gov. And that gives you an idea of what they're thinking about. I'm getting my acronyms mixed up, but let's see. Not far. Where they post the opportunity. Thank you.
SAM.gov, yes.
SAM.gov. Pre-solicitation and sources sought announcements.
Yes.
That is a prime opportunity early in the procurement process to share what you can do. People say, oh, that's not really a contracting opportunity, so I'm not going to answer that, or I'm not going to bother with that. That's the thing you definitely want to take advantage of, because they're early in the process. The earlier you are in the process, the more likely you could have something work out for you than something that's already announced, already been sourced, and you're just another bidder or another proposal submitter.
And trust me, a contracting officer is looking at a way to do this.
Yes. Great point.
Okay?
Yeah. I'm going to give you 3 unconventional pieces of advice. First, I won't sign a teaming agreement unless I negotiate out the clauses that says I'm not allowed to talk to the customer. As a small business, you have that power to negotiate that. And it starts some interesting conversations, because it comes down to, well, do you not trust us to go into that building? Why are we on your team? And especially if you're on a team because you're differentiated, and then you can have the conversation about how you align with their goals. And if I'm able to talk to the customer and look good on your behalf, we will grow this contract together. So 1, talk about that clause, take it out where you can. The second is, if you have a solid customer, I would not an exact number, 90% of my work has come from a customer and I said, hey, do you know so-and-so? Would you be willing to introduce me? The government is not, it's huge, but it's also a high school, right? So the chances that people know people is very, very high, and a government introduction puts you 20 steps ahead because they've already effectively vouched for you by even just saying, hey, you need to meet Megan, go, like it would be worth your time. So just good old fashioned networking. And the other thing I would tell you, it's being recorded, but I'll just say it anyways. More government people respond to me on LinkedIn, even if I have their email addresses. So like, don't put yourself too much in the formality of it. Just good old fashioned network and ask the people to introduce you to the people. If I find an RFI that I think is interesting, and again, it's RFI, we want to make sure we stay right of all of the solicitation and acquisition rules. But who's the program? Who are the stakeholders? And can I find a way to talk to some of those people by asking my network for an intro? You'd be shocked.
Thanks. Go ahead.
And remember that about 92% of the contracting staff are introverts,
Yes,
okay?
yeah.
They're not, unfortunately, I broke the mold at Savannah River. I'm an extrovert, and it scared the hell out of my staff. The lawyers were always with me. So consequently, you have to remember, introverts take in information differently. So you have to cater to that crowd.
Also, the contracting officers are not your sales target.
No, they are not your salespeople.
Program people.
Program people are, yeah. I need to share a story. I went to a SAMI event. I met David 4 years ago, I think, 4 or 5 years ago.
Back when I was younger.
Yeah. And I knew he worked for DOE. It was one of my clients' projects. And I said, David, what's your biggest issue that you're having? And he went down the list, and we just had the conversation. Not to say I was going to solve it, but we could have that open conversation. That's what you have to realize. Most government people, like you said, are introverts. You cannot sell them on your best pair of shoes. They don't really care. They want to know, can you help with a program or project they're working on? And I really want to thank all of you guys. I want to really take the time to thank all our panelists for taking the time to be with us today. We will be here to answer any questions, concerns. Also, a little tidbit, on those sources sought, those kind of things, please respond to them. Don't think you can't fit into them. If you respond, they're going to ask questions. Don't go, oh, that's not my thing. Those are the things that they're looking for. And then I just got notified, like, the Air Force has a whole bunch of Q&A stuff out there. Respond to those, ask questions. That will help them understand what they're looking out there in the industry, okay? And again, if you guys have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach us now. LinkedIn, I'm on, those kind of things, or small business AFCEA. Appreciate it. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you.